This is Bitsy Tulloch, and you are listening to Superman and Lois and Pals.
Greetings, super friends. Welcome to Superman and Lois and Pals. I'm Henry Bernstein, and alongside me is my favorite super pal, Professor Sam Brody. Hello, Sam, and welcome back.
Hey, Henry.
Hey, so let's talk about Superman and Lois, Season 4, Episode 7, A Regular Guy. Directed by Gregory Smith, written by Katie Aldrin and George Kitson. The Apple TV and IMDb description is, after some concerning interactions in town, Clark is determined to protect the secret that he is Superman, a task complicated by Jonathan and Jordan. Lois considers the future of the Gazette after Chrissy proposes something drastic. My initial thing, the first thing I wrote down was, flashback to first appearance, action number 1, let's go! So good. I know that we saw this scene already, but I love that they're just bringing it back because it's so good. Like, even just the shot of the green car in the distance, like, Superman's going to pick that thing up.
Yep.
That was pretty cool.
Yeah, that was pretty cool.
And in like the first few minutes, we got not one, but 2 shirt rips that were great. Like, Tyler's got the shirt rip down.
I liked this episode a lot.
It was really good.
It was a really good episode. It was one of the episodes that makes me appreciative of the fact that we have this show while it's around.
Mm-hmm. Yes. Yes. I've been seeing a lot of love for it in that very specific way. People are like, this is the best version of this. This is the best version of this. This is the best version of this. And truly, I mean, Marv Wolfman commented on it. He made a post about how this episode was fantastic. He loves what they're doing. I mean, you can't get much higher praise than that, short of I don't know, Jerry Siegel. I mean, it's funny because I don't like what they're doing, but I like how they're doing it. I do not like the idea of Superman revealing himself. It seems that they are borrowing from the Brian Michael Bendis run of just
Yep.
Clark being out and his family's cool and everyone's just cool about it. I didn't like that. It never worked for me. I stuck with it during it, but I was really grateful to Philip Kennedy Johnson and Josh Williamson when they got rid of it. But they're doing it so well that the thing that bothers me doesn't bother me. Does that make sense?
It makes sense. I had almost the same reaction. I was like annoyed that they were doing it because to me it felt like they were ratifying it. Like once it appears in more than one medium, that makes it start to feel like it's the thing that happens now.
That like eventually Superman reveals his identity and everyone's
right,
okay.
like that it will become just like the fact that they're married, right? Like they're always married now. I don't know, maybe they won't be married in the James Gunn movie because it's like takes place earlier, but like, the idea that they're on the path to marriage is like what always happens now, as opposed to the previous status quo where like they never progressed their relationship at all. So like by ratifying it, I was annoyed because I also don't like that path. But same reaction as you, I was just like, they're doing a really good job with like playing it out scene by scene, showing how he sees the effect of other people trying to maintain the lie and gets more and more uncomfortable and sees the weight it puts on them and like slowly turns against it. Like they made it feel very right for the world of the show.
Yeah, and certainly building in the flashbacks and giving us Jimmy Olsen the way they gave us Jimmy Olsen, even throwing in a sister, sure. That's fine. I thought that was really interesting. Couple quick things. Jimmy asked him to be pals, of course, and they had a reference to the Daily Star. And Jimmy called him CK, which was a nice little Lois and Clark nod. So it's just like all in the one scene, some really good stuff. And I don't know, you're giving me Clark Kent plus baseball plus the Daily Planet in a
Hmm.
flashback. I mean, come on. That's just good stuff right there.
I will say that this particular version of the Clark and Jimmy relationship underscored the sort of Elseworlds feel that I often have about this show, right? Like,
Like in the same way that you did about Lex.
yeah, like a world in which they were actually not really good friends, that like Jimmy was a sacrifice on the altar of the secret,
Mm,
right? To me is not the world.
mm,
Like there are two versions of the world that I basically see as like the canon. One is they're friends and Jimmy doesn't know, but they're still friends anyway. And the other one is Jimmy knows and is just in on it the whole time, like in My Adventures or in other versions that like that. So like either of those feels like canon to me. The one where they're not really friends because Jimmy figured out that he was being kept at a distance and like not let in. That to me is kind of tragic and sad.
mm.
And like that it felt it had like an Elseworlds vibe to me. Like I really like that they brought him back in at the end, but
Yeah.
like why wouldn't he be mad at him? Or like why would he even want to see him like we somebody you were almost friends with 15 years ago or something. Think about like that. Who is that person to you?
Right.
Like,
Well,
obviously, it's different if that person is like the most famous person in the world.
right. Well, a couple things. So, number one, I guess I didn't pick up on that nuance that they actually weren't really friends because of that, that like Clark sort of created a distance by not telling him the secret. I sort of assumed they were friends all along all these years, and then he brought him
Mm.
back at the end to tell him. But the part that bothered me about that was he should have talked to Jimmy before going on TV and talking to his sister, because to me that's sort of like if I'm Jimmy, to your point, like even more so about like meeting someone that you were just coworkers with 15 years ago, even if they're friends, which was how I interpreted it, I would be like, okay, I really appreciate you telling me now, but like you already told the world, like I know. It's so the Jimmy just being understanding, you're right, was a little odd in either case, if they were friends or if they weren't friends.
And also, when Lois said, I know just who to call, I assumed that he was going to be the
He,
reporter who got
yeah,
the story.
yeah.
And when it was Janet, I was like, oh, Jimmy
Why?
must be really mad at him. Like,
Right.
to not want to be the reporter who gets the story. And like, okay, for whatever reason, they decided to have Janet be a TV anchor now. But like, why couldn't that have just been Jimmy? Right? Like,
The Janet Olsen character was completely unnecessary in this episode, even if it's the same person who was there when Lois interviewed Superman in Remembrance of All Things Past or whatever.
mm,
'Cause I think she was in there too. I don't know if she was named, but I think she was there. When she was like, yeah, because doesn't Lois say to her, "I'm in love with him"?
I don't
Um,
remember if that was the same
I
actress,
think
but
so. So I think that was the idea, but it it could have easily have been Jimmy. Like, there's no reason to keep Jimmy just as like a guy in the bullpen who looks at the computer. He could have been an on-air reporter who does interviews. Yeah, that was kind of odd. Felt like they wanted to give us a Jimmy Olsen. They did a pretty good job giving us a Jimmy Olsen. It wasn't perfect, with the backdrop of the baseball being the main thing. And I don't know, I think they like showing Tyler doing the goofy shit, like that. The whole whatever it was he hurt, he stubbed his toe or hurt his knee or threw his back out. I was cringing watching it, and I think we were supposed to. Like, I think it was supposed to be like, Clark, you don't have to do that. He already knows. Why?
hmm
Why? And I think that was the idea. So,
hmm
good job. But yeah, the Jimmy thing wasn't quite perfect. It was nice. It was, but
I
again,
was very glad that they brought him in, and it provided an explanation for like why we haven't seen him at all the whole show.
yes.
But like
Okay.
to
Yeah.
me, it made it sad. Like,
Yeah. All right. So now I think I understand your interpretation of it, and I think you're right in that that would certainly make sense why Jimmy Olsen, their collective best friend, canonical best friend, has not visited them at the farm, or they've even mentioned him by name, that he was a potential good friend, pal,
Hmm.
and it never panned out because Clark didn't tell him the secret. And so Jimmy, while knowing it, because he's a good guy, just kept his distance.
Hmm.
Okay. Yeah. I mean, that you're right. That's sad. That's really sad.
But
Yeah.
like again, I still thought that they like I don't like that story,
Right.
but I
But
thought
well
they
done.
they told it so well
Yeah.
and like it really made sense for this character and this show. So I was just like, this is really well done, and I was very impressed.
Right. Shifting gears,
Mm.
in the Bernie voice, I'm here once again saying I don't care about Kyle and Christy, and this is a waste of screen time.
I am
I
once again asking
yeah, please
for
do not
you.
show Kyle and Chrissy on screen.
I do not care how much their house costs.
Yeah.
All the houses should cost less money. It should
Right.
not be so hard to buy a house in America.
In Smallville, Kansas, of all places, you should be able to buy a house from the billionaires and the millionaires. I don't know why her selling her share of the Gazette is so dramatic. Seems like a pretty practical thing. Lois, we have to sell our share. We need money for our baby and to buy a house. Okay.
Hmm.
And like you could even see like Clark and Lois would be like, all right, we'll buy you out, for like giving them more money than they even need, as like the
Hmm.
general, but like just stretching that whole thing out, like I don't care. I just don't care. They don't need to be on screen anymore. Like it's just I'm happy those actors are getting work, but they're not, yeah.
Yeah, I don't really know either. I don't have an answer for you there. It didn't ruin the episode for me. It didn't like
No,
I wasn't like like it was just like
I,
okay.
I kind of spaced out during it, and same goes for like Timmy Ryan, who I barely remembered.
Oh
Like,
yeah.
why is he
I,
mad? Doesn't he get to be QB because John's not doing it? What is he mad about?
um well they were caught up in the drugs thing together, weren't they?
Yeah.
So then he doesn't get to be QB because he also got kicked off.
Oh, okay. Fine. Also, Timmy Ryan is a really stupid name.
I mean, what I didn't get was if they were when they were still trying to lie, if the argument was they were trying to say that he didn't have powers back then, but you can't say I didn't have powers back then.
Right.
Why can't you just say, what are you talking about, man? I was on the drugs too. Right? Like he wouldn't have been on the drugs if he had powers, right? But he was on the drugs too. That's why he got kicked off the team. So like that part made no sense to me. But I did like that because he clearly saw everything that they were essentially forced to either gaslight him or tell the truth.
Mm-hmm.
And that like basically they refused they started out being like, okay, we're gonna gaslight him, and then they were like,
That doesn't feel good.
that
Yeah.
feels really bad.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I guess they needed someone to be everyone had their person who they had to kind of confess to, other than Lois, for whatever
Hmm.
reason. She was sort of caught up with Clark. But I did kind of laugh at one of the Kyle and Chrissy things. When Chrissy was like, "Did I get knocked up by the town bully?" That was a great line, and because you sort of get the sense that Kyle, when they were younger, was borrowing from the Superman the movie storyline, the Brad of the town, and he was kind of the bully, but he did this thing that made me crazy when he's sitting with Clark and Lois, and he's sort of like half-ass admitting to being a dick to Clark, but he's just like,
Hmm.
we didn't always really see eye to eye. And then he raises a toast to Clark. He never actually apologizes. He never actually says, Clark, I'm sorry I was mean to you when we were kids. I'm sorry I was rude to you and unwelcoming when you moved to town. I hope you accept my apology. And we
Hmm.
can and I appreciate our friendship now. Like I hate that when he just kind of, speaking of gaslighting, like he just kind of wanted acceptance for his behavior without any kind of real apology. And I was okay with just watching his growth over the last two seasons and forgetting that he was a jerk in the first season. I didn't need him to bring that back if he wasn't going to apologize. So that was the one part of the Kyle and Chrissy thing that not only I should take back when I said I don't care about it. I actually didn't like it. I did care and I don't like it. So I guess, that was that we did. I've said last season, I really like Kyle's growth, but here he kind of, to me, took a step back. I don't like when people don't actually apologize for what they're sorry for.
I guess, yeah, he might have just been thinking, well, I wasn't really bullying him because he could have kicked my ass at any moment. And like, I wasn't
Right.
actually the stronger person in that interaction. I was just
Right.
an asshole.
Right.
I mean, you can still apologize for being an asshole, I guess,
Yeah.
even to someone who is more powerful than you. But I could imagine that being the reason he didn't, thinking like, I wasn't actually even really.
Yeah. Yeah. But even like, that first couple episodes, the barbecue where he's a jerk to Clark, like he could have apologized for being unwelcoming and a jerk,
Did he
especially,
not do that already in some previous
you know
episode?
what? Maybe he did. Maybe he did, and I just don't remember. It's certainly possible. Let's talk about the main moment. Talk about a well done scene. I loved the mirroring of the last time Candace's dad got messed up in the diner, and we spent a lot of time talking about that scene, the direct homage to Superman 2 with Clark in the diner getting beat up, but then this time taking Candace's dad down, and then just bringing that scene back, but this time with real danger
Mhm.
to everyone else. And I thought it was a really interesting way for Superman to reveal himself to the world. I'm kind of been working it out in my head these last few days. I don't know how I feel about it, but it was interesting watching Clark in Flash Time, another Flash reference, Hyper Time, sort of having a moment with Lois and just looking around. And that was the moment of clarity for him
Mhm.
while the gun was being fired. It was sort of like a very blatant way of showing Superman and Clark Kent's two personalities being one, and that it really was time to let go.
Mhm.
And that's why I think I wasn't mad about it, even though I don't like like it conceptually. What did you think about that sort of slow motion piece of the realization of, obviously visually it looked great, the bullet bouncing off the chest, falling to the ground, all that.
I thought it was cool because it showed you that he had time to think, right? It really highlighted that element of like, this is a considered decision because it showed how, like, from the moment a bullet is fired to the moment it hits something, it's a lot more time for him if he
Yes.
wants
Yes.
than for anybody else.
Yes.
And then it also highlighted for me the idea of like, man, what is the way out of this situation? Like, I'm sure Silver Age Superman would have thought of something absolutely bonkers to like get out of that situation.
He flew through the
Uh,
time barrier
he flipped the time barrier to make
Well,
it so that the gun misfired.
yeah. Well, I mean, it happens in Superman in the movie, in the alley scene, right? Clark very quickly,
Hmm.
the bullet's in his hand, right? He pulls it out and it's in his hand. And Lois kind of doesn't believe what happened because he's, oh, I guess I must have fainted, and it's a little goofy. So he could have, but I think with all the eyes on them, you're right. There was
Hmm.
no way out of it. It was sort of
And
like,
specifically him being challenged to be, you can't be like, oh, your gun misfired. Weird.
yeah.
Like, so like I thought that was underscored very well with the slow motion.
Yeah. 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 They sort of made a no way out situation for Superman, which is hard to do with the Man of Steel. So that was cool. The interview itself, I thought was fine. I felt like it should have been a little more dramatic of him, like, I don't know, taking off the glasses, maybe doing a shirt unbutton or a final shirt rip or something, because he's just sitting there as Clark. And although, he says things like, when Emmett fired the bullet, it made me think maybe this is doing more harm than good. And then he says a couple other things, and has to be a family decision when he's talking to the group and they're all on board. But I don't know, that something left me a little like I wanted more from that TV interview. It felt, I don't know. What did you think of the world reveal?
Well, the thing I would have wanted to see is like when they wanted to verify the story beforehand, what did they do? Did he just take off his glasses and then put them back on? Right? Or like, why wouldn't
Yeah.
they do the interview on top of a building and then have
Yeah.
him like step off the edge of the building?
Right, right.
Right. And then be
There was
like,
nothing super that happened. It was just Clark Kent in the barn.
mhm.
I think in the comics with the Brian Michael Bendis, Ivan Reis comic, I think he's doing a press conference like in front of the Daily Planet or something, and he takes off the glasses and take opens his shirt, I think. And certainly that's the cover, but it just felt a little anticlimactic. Like, and then, and he says, I'm just a regular guy, obviously the name of the episode. And, that's sort of what we're supposed to get from this version of Clark Kent, which we've said many, many times is why this is probably my favorite live action Clark, is that he's just a dude. He's just a regular guy.
Mhm.
He's not dorky. He's not goofy. He's dorky and goofy, but in a way that I am with my high school friends.
A normal way, not like a exaggerated way.
Yeah. Yeah. Not like you said, a Silver Age way or something.
Not the way that fits into the horrible interpretation of the villain in Kill Bill.
Say more.
Do you remember that? That at the end of Kill Bill, Bill gives this like long interpretation of Clark Kent.
Oh, yes.
Like
Oh, and it's
it's
terrible.
it's
Yes.
because well, it's the kind of interpretation that a villain would have.
Right.
But like I used to always get into arguments with people because they would think that he was right, and I would be like, no, he's the bad guy. That's why he thinks that.
Right.
Like
Right. Sam, describe what Bill says, if
Bill
you can.
says that Clark Kent is Superman's like biting commentary on how stupid and people are.
Right. Right.
Right?
Right.
So that his
It's like what Lex Luthor
clumsiness,
would say about him.
mhm,
Yeah.
like his clumsiness and his like haplessness are all just like how Superman sees normal people, which is just like the worst interpretation.
Yeah. Yeah. That's bad.
So the version in this is like so toned down from that that like
Right.
you couldn't even generate that interpretation.
Right.
He
Right.
really did. He's obviously just being himself, like as opposed to the Christopher Reeve Clark Kent, right? Who really is like putting on an act when he's being Clark Kent most of the
Right. He's
time.
wearing a mask. Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah. Right. The version of the real guy actually is somewhere in between in the Christopher Reeve version. It's somewhere in between Superman and Clark Kent.
Mhm.
It's actually, I talked about this. It's actually in Superman 3 of all places when he's having a picnic with Lana and he's
Mhm.
just a normal guy.
Mhm.
Oh, it's like, oh, that's the real guy. I think Tyler's version of Clark Kent is the most normal and down to earth. And so he is a regular guy. And and that's why I think this whole thing works. And whatever they're leading to for the last 3 episodes, maybe it's just that the whole secret thing isn't a part of that story because we still
Mhm.
don't really know what Luther's endgame is. We don't know how this is gonna end. We don't know who's coming back. We don't know if it's gonna be in Metropolis. I mean, so I think they clearly want to put this story to bed, but to me, it just doesn't compute. Like, I can't deal with a world without Clark Kent. Like, it doesn't make sense. Like, to me, the whole world being cool with it, I don't, and that's why I didn't buy Bendis's run with that. And I want to see Clark in glasses. I like it. Remember, I know I keep making a big deal about Clark wearing his glasses when he's inside his own house. And you said, well, he likes them. But like now he's just not going to wear them. Like I know Lois said at the end of the episode, you look good without your
Mhm.
glasses, sweetie. But I don't know. Like what is the point of Clark Kent? Now I think that it leaves more questions than not, but maybe they just want
I
to.
thought they sort of just like when he goes back to the diner and everybody looks at him, and then what's her name is just like, "Oh, hi, Mr. Kent," and like,
Yes, yes.
walk. It's just like I thought that was trying to tell us that it's not a world without Clark Kent. It's a world in which Clark Kent is not keeping the secret that he's Superman.
Okay.
So he's still Clark Kent to everybody
Well,
who
is
knows who Clark Kent is.
I guess what I don't like is that it feels like it's a commentary on, I don't know, the way modern people look at comic books. Like I feel like a little insulted. Everyone's too smart now to think that to know that Clark and Superman are not the same thing. But it's like, well, but I like that. Like, am I too
Mhm.
stupid? And it's sort of like the whole part of the episode, like the fact that Jimmy figures it out, not in a way where like he witnesses Clark doing something super. It's just he figures out from one instance. And it made me think like, is this Clark Kent really bad at keeping the secret? Or everyone is just too perceptive? And he even says in the interview, you'd be surprised what a pair of glasses will do. Well, apparently not Clark, because the entire town of Smallville figured it out.
But
I
I don't know if it was not figuring it out. It was like people witnessed things, like
okay.
direct eyewitness, like seeing Lois like crying and sobbing with her sons over the body like it was her husband, telling everybody that that's what they saw. Whereas Jimmy did do like a little detective work, like he didn't actually have direct eyewitnessing of something. But I feel like there you can chalk it up to him being like a decent reporter. Like, I don't
Mhm.
know, like he just that was sort of how I understood it in Zack Snyder's Man of Steel too. Like that at a certain point, like the culture could no longer accept specifically Lois not knowing
Yes.
because she's
Yes.
supposed to be smart.
Yes.
And once you say that, then it's like, well, how much smarter than everyone else is she?
Hmm.
She's like X amount smarter than Jimmy, but how bad of a reporter is Jimmy? And then they're like X amount smarter than like Timmy Ryan, but Timmy Ryan is the eyewitness.
Yeah.
So like, I don't know. It didn't really bother me in that aspect.
It is one of the things I have to say I did like about Man of Steel, about the Zack Snyder. I did like that right away
Mhm.
she figured it out, and she's piecing it together, going place to place and putting,
Right.
and that was actually done really well. That was sort of a reversal. That was the one thing about that movie where I think he flipped things around in a way that made sense.
I agree.
So yeah. I liked that the Daily Planet won the Metro Cup, and last one at Bibowski's picks up the tab. That was
I didn't
the
hear
You
that.
didn't hear that? It was after they won, and I like that Jimmy ended it by saying, "I missed you too, pal."
Hmm.
You don't get Jimmy is Superman's pal, but they don't often say it to each other.
Hmm.
So my final note was a very well done episode with a plot that I don't
Hmm.
like. So, so yeah, I mean, 3 episodes left. This is the home stretch. I really try hard to avoid, the promos for each week and the pictures. I'll see the picture pop up and I'll like immediately look, promo shots for next week.
I have absolutely no idea what's going to happen, man. I don't even
Great.
have a guess.
Me neither. Isn't that great? Isn't that so
Hmm.
refreshing?
Yeah.
And especially for something like Superman, we're here. Obviously, we're Superman fans. We have been our entire lives. And I think it's fair to say we're pretty expertise at all the versions of Superman. I mean, there are some areas in which we're not, but in terms of encyclopedic knowledge, but to be so in a Superman story and not know where it's going to go, it's pretty refreshing and exciting.
I mean, obviously there's some sort of Luthor showdown, but like the shape of it, what exactly happens, I got no clue. So yeah, it is pretty cool. And I think John Henry and Natalie will come back in to do
Hmm.
something heroic.
I would
And
like
I
to see
think
that.
the town of Smallville will in some way band together to take Superman's part, but exactly how, I don't know.
I mean, I think it's fair. It should be safe to say that I think Superman's not going to die, right? Because that's how they started the season.
Right. I don't think he's going to die again.
I mean, I hope, and I'm hoping all four of the principals are not going to die. I don't want to see that. And I don't think they're going to. I think the one thing I do think we're going to see is some sort of door that's open for if they ever wanted to bring these characters back in some way. I think we're gonna have closure, but if they ever wanted to do a TV movie or something, that it's there. That's the feeling I get based on nothing.
Yeah, I don't think that. I think they're going to conclude
Like in the most conclusion-y way.
in the most conclusion-y possible way.
Okay.
Which doesn't necessarily mean death. It just means like the story will be over.
Yeah. Flash forward to 30 years later, Superman and Lois are retired. I don't know. Yeah. All right. Well, 3 episodes left. Should we do it again next week?
Let's do it again next week.
All right. Thanks, Sam.
Thanks, Henry. See you.
Thanks for listening. Our theme was composed and performed by Sam Bernstein. Don't forget to hit the subscribe button so you don't miss another thrilling adventure of Superman and Lois and Pals.
This is Bitsy Tulloch, and you are listening to Superman and Lois and Pals.